This is the TSG Multimedia Podcast for February of 2024. We're sponsored this month by Podomatic and the TSG Train Crew on Patreon. Thank you very much. I'm your host, John, and this is the longest continuously running train-related podcast I'm aware of, going strong for well over 14 years. Right now, as you're watching this, I'm in a place called Santa Rosa, producing the virtual portion of the annual Layout Design and Operations Weekend event. This meet has been going on for about 30 years, and for the last 3 straight years, we've been doing it as a hybrid event. That's when an event is both in person and also live streamed to a virtual audience of attendees who can't be there in person. I think it's a big deal to bring events like this to people who can't be there. Not only does it give those people something cool to watch, but it also includes them in something positive and special they would otherwise miss out on completely. Now, a lot has been said about the recent Amherst train show and how, most people can't go to these kind of events, so don't feel bad if you weren't able to make it out. Now, a train show might be a little bit different from the meet that I'm talking about doing right now, but there's no reason why we can't bring events to people who are stuck at home. We have the technology, and it doesn't have to require a ton of complicated equipment. You can bring any event to a virtual audience with as little as a computer and an internet connection, or even with just a smartphone. The only thing missing from most in-person only events is the will to include people who can't be there, and we're working to change that. Anyway, this month we're running a little light since we're smack dab in the middle of what I call our not-so-busy season, but I still have some interesting tidbits for you, including the last look I'll ever have at the property where the Fern Creek and Western Garden Railroad was, a brief update about the equipment from that layout, updates on editing, a visit to the SBHRS, and more. Hi, I did something kind of train-related today. I'm over here at my buddy Seth's place, and we did a product spotlight about something that he's holding. What is that thing? It's so small.
Well, it's a switch machine, a switch motor that you can use to electrically control your turnouts. So it would be a replacement or a alternative to a tortoise-type switch machine.
But it's way smaller.
Way, way smaller.
So we're going to talk about this in much more detail on a product spotlight that either just came out or it'll come out next week. So you can be on the lookout for that. So on January 14th, I went back to 419 Ocean View Avenue, which is where the Fern Creek and Western lived for 9+ years. I was there for a different reason, but while I was there, I took some photos of some familiar places with very unfamiliar appearances. This is a view of the yard where the largest part of the Fern Creek and Western used to be, the front yard. And this photo shows where the Paria Canyon trestle used to be. And you'll notice there's a bunch of holes in the ground. This is where the miniature trees that used to be here were taken up because the trees were preserved, which I think is pretty cool. You can see in the upper right corner that the tunnel, or what used to be the tunnel, is completely gone. The wood that served as the tunnel's ceiling or roof was completely rotted out, so that was something that was going to have to be fixed anyway, but it's weird to see it in this state. In this photo, the foreground on the right is where the Fern Creek yard used to be, and the raised portion to the left in the corner of the yard there is where Nolensburg was, completely gone. Here we see what's left of Mountain Charlie and the raised garden box that was built to provide enough depth for plenty of operational interest. Track and everything completely gone. And here's a view from an angle that we would see dozens of times during an open house as we helped operate this railroad. And on the bottom third of this picture, sort of to the right, where that little fern tree is growing, you can see where what was called the Lee Viaduct used to be. This was a huge custom scratch-built bridge that bridged the garden box from the last scene to the sort of island there in the middle. And so it's kind of surreal to see that it's all gone. It's strange, a layout can mean a lot of things to people. This one was kind of a living, breathing event where people would go and hang out, and a lot of friendships were made here. And as sad as it is to see this, what used to be a layout in this state, it's also kind of compelling to think about the possibilities for when the layout is rebuilt somewhere else. What's it going to be? On the 17th, we went live with the Talking Trains show. For this episode, I was joined by special guest co-host Jennifer Howell once again, and after a brief update about the Layout Design and Operations Weekend event that's happening right now, we spoke with John Crisanti about his newly released Montana Rail Link book. John's presentation was great too, covering Montana Rail Link in a fair amount of detail. The show is worth checking out on the replay, and after seeing the book that John sent me that same week, I can also say that it's also worth getting for your collection with tons of great pictures and history to enjoy. We did something train related today. Came to the South Bay Historical Railroad Society for the members meeting. And these are held, about half a dozen times every year. And we don't make it to all of them. They have a lot of really good stuff going on here. And if you're in the Bay Area and haven't been here before, it would be worth checking out SBHRS.org. Come volunteer. On January 28th, I had a special live show with my friend James, who updated us on the goings-on at the Amherst train show that took place last weekend. It's always great to catch up with James, and we had a nice discussion about some of the announcements that manufacturers made at the show, as well as some talk about why events like that are so fun to attend. Also in January, I received a couple of stylish Around the Layout podcast shirts. I'm wearing one of them right now. And in case you haven't heard, the Around the Layout podcast is produced by a guy named Ray, who does some pretty great interviews. You can check it out at aroundthelayout.com. Thanks for the shirts, Ray, and thanks for doing what you do and being a positive influence in both hobbies, podcasting and model railroading. I think we need more of that. So as I fine-tune the calendar for the year, the main events come into focus. We'll be shooting a couple of these main events over the next couple months. One is the 100th birthday of the Clover Valley No. 4 at Niles Canyon, and we'll also shoot a layout tour that's been on the radar for quite some time now, and also the annual Railfest event at Hillcrest Tree Farm in Reedley. It's going to happen in March, and we're going to plan to go to that as well. I'm sure I'll have something to say about all that when it happens. In the meantime, I have been editing a lot, including putting the finishing touches on the ultimate Fern Creek and Western layout tour that we're going to be premiering here on the channel in March. I also completed editing on the Sonora Pacific Garden layout with F. John LaBarba. This video was shot last summer, and it was a lot of fun to shoot, and F. John is also an HO scale modeler with a layout that I'd love to go back and cover. It's really well done. And the garden layout is nothing to sneeze at either, as you'll find out next weekend right here on the channel. If you're part of the TSG Train Crew on Patreon, you've already seen this layout tour because the Train Crew gets sneak peeks at all the feature videos that come out in advance of the official public release. We have a catch from Robert Darby, who sent in this photo of a garden scale narrow gauge 2662 that was taken inside a movable trailer when he was at the train show in Sacramento last month. That's right, someone has a garden layout inside a trailer that they take around to train shows. Looks like some pretty good modeling too. How cool is that? If you have a train or model catch you'd like to share on this show, please email it to podcast@tsgmultimedia.com. Be sure you own the shots and include the whats, whens, and wheres of the shots you send in. From time to time, I'll help out an organization with a restoration project by publicizing it here on the channel. A great example of this is the 1744 restoration up at Niles Canyon that I've been documenting the progress on. The three main goals I've identified in our mission here at TSG Multimedia are documenting prototype railroads and rail fanning, promoting model railroading, and preserving history. 1744 fits perfectly with two of those goals in that mission. Sometimes I'm contacted by people with personal GoFundMe type requests, and some of these requests sound legitimate, and I really want to help. However, I don't. I can't. No matter how valid they seem, I can't do it, because if I help one person with a GoFundMe, then to be fair, I'd have to help everyone who seems to have a good cause. And next thing you know, it's all I'd be doing. And this channel and TSG Multimedia's social media pages in other places are not about publicizing or promoting personal things like that. And frankly, I doubt most of the viewers who keep up with what we're doing here want to be pitched to give money to everyone and their brother every day, right? It's hard enough asking people to help support my own work here, because I doubt they want to hear that either. It's only done out of necessity, and every penny that's generated by TSG Multimedia goes to keeping these lights on. So believe me when I say no one's getting rich here, nor will they. Unless, right, by some strange miracle, the channel goes super viral, in which case I may become a kind of benefactor for some of these personal GoFundMe type projects that I hear about. It's hard to field these requests because I'm exactly the kind of person who really wants to help everyone. So while I'm absolutely sympathetic to most people's dreams of doing something they can't afford on their own, I just can't publicize for strangers on my platform simply because that's not what we do here. In any case, I wanted to get that off my chest because these kinds of requests come in fairly often, and I really don't want anyone who's asking to think that they're not worthy or something like that. This just isn't the right place for it. Anyway, in my commentary just now, I alluded to asking people to support my work, which is something I have to do in order to keep things going here. And I started a Patreon page a little over 5 years ago because YouTube alone just doesn't cut it. So if you can help out with a few bucks a month, please do. You can find more information at patreon.com/TSG Multimedia. And just so you know, patrons get content with no ads weeks before anybody else. They also get behind the scenes information about events that we're planning to cover and projects we're working on. And there's more, like deals on models and stuff like that. Just check out the site, patreon.com/TSG Multimedia, and join the crew if you can. It would be greatly appreciated. Now, one more quick thing before I wrap up. Did you know that this podcast is available in both video format and audio format? Now, admittedly, it's probably more enjoyable in video form since a lot of what I share here has a strong visual element to it. But if you have more time to keep up with us by listening in the car, for example, you can find the podcast in audio-only form almost anywhere you get audio podcast content, including the Google Play and Apple Podcast stores. So with all that being said, stay tuned here because I'll be updating you on more of the events I'm planning to cover as 2024 rolls along. And before you know it, we'll be talking about all the great things we did this year and looking forward to 2025. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.